Colorado is joining a new conference in 2024, but how does it going to go? Is it going to be better than the Pac-12, worse than the Pac-12? We're going to talk about that.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borber. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Joining me today is the lovely, the legend, Shehan Jeyarajah. Shehan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Shehan just recently dropped his Big 12 post-ring power rankings over at CBS Sports, so go check them out. But we're going to talk about them, and we're going to pick apart everything. We're going to discuss how strong is the Big 12 in comparison to the Pac-12 this past year, where Colorado fits in this whole mess of the Big 12, and the return, because I think people forget that they were once a member of the conference. So, Shehan, talk to me, let me go over. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off before you even start talking. Let me go over the order that you have, and then we'll kind of discuss where Colorado fits in this. So, from 1 to 16 now, I feel like they need to update the name, by the way. They got Shehan has Utah at number 1, Kansas State at number 2, Kansas at 3, Oklahoma State, who was in the Big 12 title game last year, at number 4, Arizona at 5, Iowa State at 6, West Virginia 7, UCF at 8, Texas Tech at 9, TCU at 10, Colorado at 11, Baylor at 12, BYU at 13, Cincinnati at 14, Houston and Arizona State rounding up the rear. So Colorado's kind of in the middle or close-ish to the middle. Kind of walk me through that.
Well, I think that, when you look at this league, it is going to be an incredibly balanced league. I think that certainly Utah and Kansas State, to me, are the two top teams entering. And I think Utah probably is number 1 entering the 2024 season. But really, when you look at the rest of the board, I think that there are 10 to 12 teams that have a chance to maybe take that second spot and be playing in Arlington. Some of it's going to come down to schedule. Some of it's going to come down to just close game luck. Like you look at Oklahoma State last year, they went 5-1 in one-score games, and that was kind of it, right? Like they weren't necessarily a world-beating team, but that was enough just getting some of those breaks. So I think it's going to be another year of the same in the Big 12, and ultimately, again, I view it sort of more in tiers. I think that those top two are a tier unto itself. That middle is kind of like it could go either direction. And I think that there is a bottom tier starting around 12 or 13 as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think I like the close game stat you threw out, because it's honestly, when it works for you, it's great. Like TCU, for instance, when they made it to the title, they were like a close game merchant, and then all of a sudden, like, flip it to this next season and they were like on the wrong end of every close game they had. So it's really one of those things where it's literally a coin flip, and it just honestly depends sometimes on who has the ball last, a lucky bounce, or maybe a costly call, which we never want to blame officials, but something along those lines. Colorado is right above that kind of lower tier that you just mentioned, and realistically, I think Colorado has a chance to sort of be one of those 12 teams you mentioned that could contend for that top spot-ish, or that second spot, excuse me. Can you kind of talk about why you see this team differently than you did last year? Because I think last year we were both hesitant to be like, yeah, this team's going to be really good.
Well, I think that for Colorado, they enter a situation where I think from a talent perspective, they're going to be competitive with a lot of teams in the Big 12. I don't think they're at the top, but they're certainly not at the bottom, like I worried about at times last season. I think that the few returning players that they have, I think, are proven, right? Like Deion Sanders coming back, Travis Hunter, so I do think that there are things to like about this team. And I think the other piece too is, you look at this league, and I know that we're going to talk a little bit about how kind of this compares to the Pac-12 this last year, but there isn't a heavy in this league, right? Like I think that Utah might be it, but there isn't a Washington from last year. There isn't an Oregon from last year. There isn't a team that's just going to come in and be able to function at a different level than Colorado. So I think that there is legitimate reason for optimism and growth at Colorado. And again, I have them at 11 right now, but a big part of that is because I think that they are both the most upwardly and downwardly mobile team in the conference. Like there's a chance things just go terribly and they finish last, there's also a chance that everything comes together, that this offensive line gels, and that they finish, maybe in the top 4 in the league or something like that. So it's going to be tight. And again, when you look at a lot of those other teams that I mentioned, I think that you're saying a lot of the same stuff. Kansas, for example, they used a lot of close game luck to rise up and win 9 games in the Big 12 last year. And they have a big question mark in quarterback Jalen Daniels, who's been hurt the past 2 years, really on and off. So, like, if he gets hurt, how does that change how you look at this team? I think that you look at a team like Iowa State. They were on the wrong end of the close game luck back in 2021. They were on the right end in 2020. They were on the wrong end in 2023. So, like, there are just so many of these teams that are very close. And I think that there's just a little bit more of a baseline to work with when we talk about Colorado heading into 2024.
Yeah, and I like that you talked about the Pac-12 again, because we're going to dive into that right now. Shout out to my former employer. May they rest in peace. The Pac-12 was, honestly, had I just started watching college football this past year, I would have assumed that most people view the Pac-12 how we view the SEC in most years, because it was like they have like 5 teams that are contending. There was at one point, I think, with like a handful of weeks left in the season, I think there was still 5 or 6 teams that had a realistic mathematical chance at the Pac-12 title, which means they had a realistic mathematical chance at kind of ruining someone's playoff hopes. The Big 12 last year, I would say it wasn't top heavy necessarily, because I feel like Texas and Oklahoma State and Oklahoma, and there's a hodgepodge of teams that kind of got in the mix there. West Virginia had a nice season. It just wasn't like these are the elite teams and these are the bad teams. Can you kind of give me like a breakdown or a general description of the Big 12 and how it differs from the Pac-12?
Well, I think that the Big 12 in 2024 is kind of like what the Pac-12 has been over the past 7 years or so, and less what it was in 2023. 2023, again, we had multiple teams in the Pac-12 that were nationally competitive, whether Washington, whether Oregon. I think that even you look at Utah when they had good quarterback play was really good. I think you look at Oregon State was really, really good. Arizona, of course, went on to win 10 games and beat Oklahoma in the Alamo Bowl. So I think that it's kind of like the older version of the Pac-12 where, I mean, you look, and I do think that the one other piece with this too is in the Big 12, I think one of the biggest differences that Colorado fans who are kind of new are going to notice is that 1 through 16, like, try to find the team that isn't invested. Try to find the team that isn't functioning at a high level. And results might not be there as yet, but like nobody can say that Arizona State isn't trying hard, or that Houston isn't trying hard, or that Cincinnati isn't trying hard. There's going to be some circumstance to why maybe they're struggling, but I think that the level of investment in the middle and the bottom is going to surprise some people, really in college football at large. I mean, again, you mentioned Baylor as the 12 team right now. They went 3-9 last year. 2 years before that, they were in the Sugar Bowl, right? So like it's that kind of league where it really is. You can move up and down so quickly in it because the teams are so balanced, and there isn't this sort of super team that nobody can compete with especially Oklahoma gone. And so I do think that it does make it wide open, but it's a similar deal to last year in the Pac-12 for Colorado, where there were some close games, and when they made mistakes or when they had issues, obviously that Stanford game comes to mind. Any single team in the Big 12 has the ability to do that to Colorado any given week. And I mean, we even saw it with Arizona State, who I've projected as the worst team in the Big 12. They nearly did it last year with in Kenny Dillingham's first year. They nearly beat Colorado as well. So again, the ceiling is as high as I think that anybody can think. I mean, I think that for me, the ceiling is probably somewhere in like the 9 wins, which would be a great season, of course. And I think that the floor, though, is like it's on the table that they go 1-8 again in conference play.
Yeah, the Big 12 it honestly reminds me of like I like the Pac-12 comparison because I hadn't thought about that, but it just reminds me of like every week is a coin flip. So it's like, okay, we're playing, say, Iowa State in Ames this year or whatever it may be. And it's like, okay, Iowa State, they're 5-5 at this point. I don't know if they're going to beat us or not. Like, that's how it always feels in the Big 12. It's like, does this team have a winning record? No. But can they beat us by 2 touchdowns if something goes wrong? Absolutely, yes. So I really love that comparison that you pulled there. Last thing before we go on the Big 12, I think one of the biggest sort of storylines around the Big 12 is that it's the weaker conference of the four at the moment. Can you kind of talk about, is it being overlooked? Is it sort of because they don't have a major brand or like premier blue blood program?
Well, I think that as we head forward, not just for the 2024 season, this is going to be a bit of an existential question, which is what matters more in terms of branding, especially having a great team or having a lot of good teams, right? So, for example, the ACC has Florida State, who really should have been in the playoff last year. They've got Clemson, who's won 2 national championships, and like a whole lot of mid past that. Like there's not a lot to be excited about with the rest of the ACC, but you have these sort of signature brands. So you're able to say, hey, the ACC's won this many playoff games. They've won 2 national championships. They participated in the 2014 initial college football playoff. They've got, they have a 2013 national championship. What good does that necessarily do for Wake Forest, right? Like what does that mean necessarily for NC State? I think that's the big question mark versus in the Big 12. Like you look at the amount of teams that have played in the Big 12 championship game since they brought it back in 2017. I think I counted as like 6 teams, not counting a team like Utah coming in, not counting Colorado with what they're trying to do right now, not counting Arizona who won 10 games last year. So now, I think that from a branding perspective, people are going to pay attention to who is winning playoff games, who's winning national championships. And I think that the ACC, for example, is going to have a chance to probably do a little more of that, but it's going to be concentrated in 2 teams. I think that the Big 12 has multiple teams that are going to be able to win playoff games. We'll see how many, but I think like a playoff game, I think is very much possible. I think that whenever the playoff continues, like the Big 12 champion, it could be different in a lot of years. I could see 6 or 7 different Big 12 teams ultimately making the playoff, even if none of them make the Final 4 or the Final 2. So it's going to be a balance. And I think that how it's sold by the conference and by their commissioner, Brett Yormark, is going to be a big part of figuring out whether they're going to be a success or not.
Which Brett Yormark, he's kind of like I don't want to say a marketing guru, but he's got things figured out over there. Like he knows what buttons to push and what buttons not to push at the right time. So I think the Big 12 is kind of, I feel like they can make a statement even if they're not like the sexiest brand in college football, if you will. When we come back, we're going to be talking about what constitutes a failure or a success for Colorado. But first, a word from our sponsors over at LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In any given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking on the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. It's constantly finding ways to make this process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, welcome back. We are joined by Shehan Jeyarajah of CBS Sports. We are talking about what constitutes a success and a failure. Last season, while I think a lot of people got caught up in the 3-week hoopla, which I mean, let me tell you, it was a glorious, that was like the most electric 3 weeks of college football I had witnessed, arguably in my life, just in the sense of my family does not care about college football. My girlfriend's family does not care about sports at all. And I had people asking me about Deion Sanders because he was on every show imaginable. It was like Good Morning America, 60 Minutes, every show that old people watch, he was on it and they were dialed in. So it was a very exciting start to the season. Obviously, they fell off a cliff and ended up at 4-8. But if you look at it from a realistic perspective, that was a success considering they were 1-11 the year before. And that program was about as irrelevant as a college football program could be. And I always say you don't want to be bad and you don't want to be irrelevant, but it's even worse to be both. And I think Colorado before Coach Prime was both. Can you kind of talk about what makes them a success or failure this year now that we saw, I guess, the floor of the program?
Well, I think there's 2 sort of questions to bring up with this, right? There's being an off-field success and there's being an on-field success. So I think that Colorado as an off-field program, like you said, this was a program that needed so much in terms of just attention and excitement. And we've already seen, of course, with like boosters are more involved than they've ever been. Fans are more invested than they've ever been. I mean, even like down here in Dallas, Texas, you see more Colorado stuff than you ever saw before. And I think also, of course, with them coming back to the Big 12, that's going to be a big thing, especially in my Dallas market. Now, the question is, I think, the on-field piece, right? And last year, like you said, they jumped from 1-11 to 4-8. After the first 3 weeks of the year, it ended up being a little bit of a mixed bag. They were competitive in more games, certainly, than they were the year before that. But I think that you also have to add the context, right? They still finished 1-8 in Pac-12 play. They still, they won 4 games outside of that 1-11 year every year since 2014. So like it was a good first step, right? Mm-hmm. Like I think that from a pure football perspective, it was a good first step. It's what they needed to see. It's right on track is what I would consider it. I think what makes this 2024 season maybe even more interesting than the 2023 season is that they're kind of running back the strategy, right? So like I was curious after this first year, do we have a situation where Colorado is like, we did the add 70 plus players in Deion Sanders' first year, and in year 2, we're going to try to build on that versus kind of starting over again and trying to like reshuffle. And they kind of decided to do the latter, which surprised me a little bit. Now, they still have several good players who are going to be a part of this team. Key guys at quarterback, of course, key guys in the secondary, key guys, at wide receiver. But like the entire offensive line is brand new now. The most of the defensive line is brand new now. It's the running back room completely brand new once again. So we haven't really seen this before in college football, and I think that's what makes it terrifying in some ways, but also exciting in other ways. So when you start talking about from an on-field perspective, what's fair to think about with Colorado? I think certainly making a bowl game should be the expectation, right? Like they should expect to be in the postseason with how much they've put into the program this offseason with some of the acquisitions that they've made. And I think that if they make a bowl game, I would consider that, and I would sell that if I'm Deion Sanders as success, making a bowl game in year 2. That would be, jumping from 1-11 to 4-8 to being in a bowl game in year 3. That to me is a clear upward trajectory of success. Now, I will say too, right? Like I'm curious, and obviously you're around the program, fans are around the program every single day, right? I don't feel like 6-6 would feel like it's worth all of the talk that's been had this offseason. And I get that piece too. I think that, again, it's a combination of trying to make it to the postseason, which like making the postseason in college football for every program is an achievement, right? Like is an accomplishment, especially at Colorado, a place that doesn't do it with a ton of consistency. And I think the other piece too, and probably the thing I would view as more success is if they're able to make the postseason and win 6 or 7 games, and obviously with the potential for more, but if they're able to do that and also return a core of players in 2025 as well. Because I think probably my big concern about what Colorado is in 2024 is that, like I said, 1-11 to 4-8 is progress, but they kind of didn't want to build on all the progress, right? Like they didn't want to say, let's continue to develop, let's continue to move along. So I think that would be the other pieces. I want to see 6 or 7 wins. And I also want to see a few guys who they feel like they can build on long-term as well and continue to take another step forward into 2025.
Yeah, you make a lot of great points there. And I wanted to touch on the transfer portal class. That to me, the biggest difference this year compared to last year, because I was equally surprised that he threw together a top 25 class within like 5 minutes on the job last year. Like he was on the job for like a week, and all of a sudden he was flipping guys like Dylan Edwards. He had guys flipping from Auburn without even taking visits to Boulder, Colorado. And these kids were like, you know what? I'm going to go play for Deion Sanders regardless of where he is. And then I was like, okay, so he should probably be able to put together a top 25 class again. And he just didn't seem to want to. But I look at the portal class, and I say this all the time, and I think this is kind of their biggest problem, at least from my perspective, is their identifying talent issue last year. I think last year they just valued quantity of players over quality of players. So it was like, we don't want anyone from the 1-11 team. All of you leave. We just want as many people that have played football at another college before. And I think that kind of came back to bite them because it was like, okay, we have an offensive line that is mostly FCS guys that weren't even all worldly at their FCS program. They were solid, or group of 5 guys. Like they were solid. And that was an issue. Same thing with the trenches. They had a bunch of guys that were never the guy. They were always a rotational piece. And so this year, I will say they have gotten a lot more experienced guys, a little more proven guys, as proven as you could get in the portal realistically, because as we know, you're not getting the All-American left tackle to come to whatever program because they don't leave their programs unless there's like some crazy circumstance. Like it's very difficult to get guys in the trenches to leave their programs because they typically don't want to unless there's money or just another underlying circumstance. But so I thought that was interesting that you brought that up because I do agree with that point. In terms of, I like the sustained success or the sustained development because nothing has been sustained this far. He has 2 new coordinators. He has like a roster full of new players, which granted, I would say for the most part, I counted this a few shows ago. I counted there's around 35-ish guys that have left. There was about 11 guys that were key contributors or starters. The rest of them were kind of flameouts, which is why I kind of question their talent evaluation process because it's like, what is the issue here where we keep bringing in guys that aren't able to succeed? So what is going to be the difference this time around? But that'll be something we see in the coming months. What do you think about that kind of take where it's more so their issue of talent acquisition or evaluation rather than, I guess, on-field issues or product?
No, I think that's a great point. And I think that, to kind of touch it on another point, right? Like this is the sort of thing where having staffers who, of course, have familiarity with recruiting and with college football. And also, I think, obviously the program has decided to kind of take a specific approach when it comes to especially high school recruiting, right? They're more wanting kids to come to them than necessarily going to them. And I do think that that's a piece that you need to find a way to replicate in some way, because I mean, one thing that you hear a lot, like I've talked to recruiting people at programs that are harder to recruit to. Maybe, I've talked to people at Rice, for example, where like you have to understand the makeup of these kids because you need to know if they can get into the school just to start off. I think that a lot of the time that stuff happens when you are visiting a high school coach or when you are in a building or in a program. You can get a little bit of a feel for how these kids are. Now, as transfers, I think that's a little less important, I would say, because you do have track record, right? You do have on-field track record. You're able to see transcripts. You're able to maybe call up another coach and ask, hey, like, why is this kid leaving? Should I be concerned about this? Or was it just a playing time type situation? And then again, like you said, they are bringing in a couple of guys who are proven. I look at that defensive line class. To me, that is the crown jewel of this roster right now, is the guys that they're bringing in on the defensive line. That transfer from Pitt, who obviously was meant to be a big contributor for them in 2024. Now he's going to be playing for Colorado. Chidozie Nwanku is a player who I covered at Houston, who I think is incredibly underrated. So I do think, I think you're right. They've done a better job of trying to bring in some sure things to shore things up. But again, I think that you allude to it a little bit, right? So they bring in these guys who maybe, especially in 2023, who they didn't have all the information on, I guess you could say as well. And I think the other piece too, though, is this. I think their approach has been very NFL in a way, which is to say they are bringing in guys to contribute for what they are right now. I think that part of college football too, I especially think on the offensive line, is you also have to take raw pieces and try to make them into something else as well. And I think that we've seen that. I mean, look, Shedeur Sanders, right? Like he has developed so much under Deion Sanders and under this staff, and even at Jackson State, now to Colorado. I think that they have examples of development, but I think that that's another piece I'm going to be watching for in 2024 is with some of these players, especially some of the returners, like how much do they improve from year one to year two? And I think that if I do see growth, that just makes me feel a lot better about what they can be long-term.
Yeah. Cause I feel like there's a lot of like questions around their development, which I think, to Deion Sanders' credit, I think he's trying to address all of his problems. He's just doing them all at once, which I don't think we see. Like
it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, we don't see like last year. I think it was after the UCLA game when he was mauled every game, but Shedeur Sanders was mauled especially. They had like 3 NFL defense linemen on that across that line, and That's when Deion Sanders was asked about the line. And he's like, I got to replace him. And so he replaced him. He brought in like 9 new people. And then it was like, okay, we have issues defensively. They're not good at stopping the run. They're not good against the pass. And so I think Charles Kelly, while he's respected in college football, I think it was probably a mutual sort of like, it just didn't work out for either of us. Sean Lewis, the head coach of San Diego State now, he obviously had a lot of success at Kent State, and then it just didn't work out in Colorado. But Deion Sanders was like, okay, it's week 9 and I don't care. We are making a change. So he is very like ready to pull the trigger on changes. And I don't think we've seen that at this level where they don't at least wait it out a little bit.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I do think that, again, the question is going to be in the medium to long term, right? Mm-hmm. What is their vision for what they want to be? And I think, you can kind of learn it on the fly. And I mean, Deion Sanders has never been a staffer in a power conference program, right? Like, it is something that's new. And I think that it is a credit to try and grow and try to improve and find ways to use your advantages. But I do think that also, right, one thing that I've kind of said this offseason is this is a battle in some ways against the conventional logic, right? Like, there are ways that people do things, there are ways that people grow teams, they hire staffers, all this sort of stuff. And I think that that's what makes the Colorado thing so fascinating, is that it kind of is a question of what is, like, does the conventional logic work, or are there other ways? I think that the first year was somewhat inconclusive. There were reasons to think one way, reasons to think the other way. And I think that's also why 2024 is so exciting.
Yeah. And this is a quick question before we move on. Yes or no? If they say they finish below 500, we're just going to say that they don't make a bowl game and they're somewhat healthy. Like, Shedeur Sanders doesn't go down with an injury, because obviously that would derail their season, but he's healthy. Travis Hunter's healthy. If they go below 500, is it time to scrap the portal method?
It's a great question. I mean, I think that would be really concerning to me, because this is like the year in some ways where they need to make that jump with Shedeur and Travis still around. So I would say yes, that I think that that's kind of proof that the portal method isn't going to work. And I'd especially say if their offensive line is really bad this year, right? Like, if it's a repeat of last year, after saying we're going to get rid of all the players from the 2022 team and bring in a bunch of new guys, and we're going to get rid of all the guys from the 2023 thing and bring in a bunch of new guys. And if 2024 is also not good, I think, yes, you really need to start taking a hard look and ask some hard questions about the portal method.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting sort of, once it gets to like October, where that record is, because we're going to have to start talking about that again. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Colorado's media presence. They're very active on the socials. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Go check out my guy, Anthony Edwards. He's balling up right now. He's torching the Denver Nuggets, even if they didn't win. Go check out a guy like Jalen Brunson. He's gritty. He's a lefty. There's always something there with the lefties. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, Shehan, we are talking about Colorado's media presence. Let me give you just an overall summary of like how I see it. So we'll go back 2 weeks. Didn't love it. When the Athletic article, I think, did Xavier Smith, or not the article itself. The graphic is what did him dirty. He was the only one that was quoted on the graphic. There was obviously 3 or 4 players quoted in the story. And I don't think there's anything wrong. I've been slandered every day I bring this up. I don't think there's anything wrong with him sharing his story. Now, I think there could have been maybe a little more awareness from his side or his camp that he was probably going to be slandered by what has turned into a cult-like following. But again, he's sharing his story. He was asked about it. I saw nothing wrong with the story, because as I say all the time, if you thought, I think it was like 70 guys were going to leave a program all at once, coached by an NFL Hall of Famer, if you thought that was just going to go forgotten and we were never going to touch on him again, I got some like beachfront property in the middle of South Dakota to sell you, because that is just not how things work. Now, last week, they had like the, I guess, media trifecta. Coach Prime is appearing on the Nelk podcast. I forgot what it's called, but the Nelk boys, obviously they're one of the bigger YouTube sensations. Travis Hunter's on the cover of the long-awaited EA Sports college football video game, and then Shiloh Sanders is on TV. So what do you make of their media presence, and like how can they harness it and turn it into like a selling point?
Well, I think that certainly it's a big part of their sales pitch right now, right? Like the idea that if you are overlooked, this is a place where you're going to get on TV. People are going to watch you. People are going to talk about you. I think about like Jordan Seaton, right? He's been kind of integrated into that like Shador and Travis sort of trio in some ways. And he's, he's not necessarily walking fashion week, but he's with them a lot, right? And so I think that that's a big part of the appeal for both players and also people who are fans of the program, is like the way that they do things, is the conversation, is the talk. I've kind of said before, and I don't mean this, like I mean this just as a matter of fact statement, like a lot of the Colorado story, because I've talked about the football piece of it, a lot of the story is a celebrity story, right? Like it almost is like you have to compare it in some ways to like a Kardashian or something like that. We're Johnny Manziel in the college football world back in the day, where this isn't, hey, how does Texas A&M match up with Florida? This is like, oh, Johnny Manziel is hanging out with Drake, right? Yeah. It's a different kind of world. It's a different kind of conversation. And I think that we've seen this happen in a way that has long-term impacted a program in a positive way. I actually think we're seeing it right now, for example, with the Caitlin Clark story at Iowa and how that's elevating that program. And they're getting some key transfers and some Big Ten players because they want to put on that Iowa jersey because Caitlin Clark made it famous. And so I do think that that piece can easily be turned into a positive, and has been turned into a positive for the program. I think from my perspective, right? Like I really try with Colorado to focus on the football, right? Like I really try, because I think there's enough people talking about all the other surrounding stuff of it. And I think those are good conversations to have, but I think that I can more helpfully discuss the football conversation. I would love to hear a little bit more on the football side from them, right? Like I would love to hear, and that you get so much access in terms of like the reality show and the videos, right. And Deion Sanders Jr. does a great job with the social media stuff and his YouTube shows and all this sort of stuff. But like I would love to, I remember actually I was in the building last year at the TCU game, right? Like I was in the building when Deion Sanders calls out Ed Werder in the press conference and says, "You don't believe, I say you believe," right? Like I was there for all of it. And I think that like all that stuff, I mean, it projects an image and a message that I think is great, but I would also love to hear more about the football, right? Like I would love to hear more about like, hey, like Coach Prime, like I would love to hear like your thoughts on, I wrote a couple weeks ago about Colorado's offensive line development and just how difficult it is to transition an offensive line and bring in a whole group of transfers. And like, that's not the sort of thing that's being talked about, right? Like it's we're kicking out the old, we're bringing in the Louis, right? Like it's more like sort of big picture approach type stuff. So I would love to hear more. I think that it would help people understand the program better and understand the strategy. I think that Colorado fans, I think that they see people questioning the methods, right? Especially from a football perspective. And I know that everybody was kind of like, well, this is what happens everywhere, every year. What happened, and why are we talking about these guys who were kind of pushed out? Being pushed out certainly is not unusual. That's not rare. Right? The scale is rare. Like we have never seen 70 plus players switch over on a roster. I don't think that we have to be dumb about it and pretend that this is just
and the person who did it, right? Like it's not like it's not like it was Lane Kiffin or say the Fresno State head coach. It was Deion Sanders.
Right. And so I think that, and even for example, you mentioned Xavier Smith, right? Like this is a defensive back who probably was very excited to play for one of the greatest players in the history of football. And so there's context to why people are questioning it. There's context to why people are saying, does the portal approach work? There's context to why people are asking, can you flip an entire offensive line? There's context to saying Sean Lewis is one of the most respected offensive coaches in the game. Like, was it a good decision to, but like, again, I think that there has to be a separation between the football questions and the like big picture questions about like who these people are and how they present themselves. I don't think that's all that relevant, to be honest, when we talk about football, whether Deion Sanders talks a lot of trash. I don't think that matters when we talk about the football side, but I think that these conversations often get conflated, both
Yes.
from both sides, right? The media side and also from the Colorado Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders side, right? Like the question wasn't about whether Xavier Smith was mid. Like he with his injuries, he probably couldn't have played right away at Colorado. The question is, how was that handled? Is it important that this super powerful guy, the son of this Hall of Famer, calls out this individual player? That the fact that the Hall of Famer himself calls out his teammate, right? Like, was that necessary? Does that actually add to the branding and the conversation? That's, I think, been the question that I'm trying to wrestle with as somebody who, of course, is a national writer. But look, there are ways to leverage the celebrity and attention that Deion Sanders gets, and this isn't unique to Deion Sanders. I mean, people wanted to be around Nick Saban too, right? Like, he is as much a celebrity, not to the level of Deion Sanders, but in college football, like, he's a celebrity that people want to be around. And so you can take that and bottle it and turn it into something. And so I think that to me, again, I almost like want to draw a separation between the story of Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, the giant machine, and like Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, the 10 assistant coaches, the guys who are trying to develop offensive and defensive linemen. Like, I think those are two different conversations, but both of them are also fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's honestly, I haven't heard that perspective at all. Like, I think it's like, and even I approach it sometimes, it's like it's tied together. And I honestly,
Right.
the only time I tie it together is when they do something on social media. Like when Shedeur Sanders had his comment, I was like, that just puts a target on your back even more. Like, everyone already wants to beat you. It reminds me of Texas, if you will, where regardless of Texas is 5-7, everyone wants to beat them up. They want to beat Texas because you're still beating the brand. And I think when you're playing Colorado, teams aren't playing the logos. They're not playing the logo of the Buffaloes. They're playing Deion Sanders. They're playing Shedeur Sanders. They're playing Travis Hunter. And so I think that's where it kind of gets twisted up for me. But I really love that perspective and analysis you offered there. Realistically, I do think that the media kind of affects them in the sense of like they egg it on because I think they love it, but I also think they use it as their motivator. So it's like they'll do something and then all of a sudden they're like, no one believed in us because you guys wrote that. Like, they do keep receipts. I did find that interesting because there was one day where Deion Sanders Jr. was posting articles on Instagram, and one of my articles was on there, and I was like, oh, I was like, they do in fact screenshot things and keep receipts. But it's just really interesting to see. And I think this is also the other point, and I'll end on this and let you finish as well. I don't think we've ever seen a coach as active on social media, and I think college football is adapting to that. I think Lane Kiffin is very funny on social media. I think trying to think of who else I've seen on social media that's like super active, and there's not many that come to mind, at least not for me. Deion Sanders, whether it's him or a social media manager, I'd pull it was the social media manager thing every time something would go wrong. That'd be my move. Like, it wasn't me. It was someone on my team.
It was my intern who tweeted, "Oh Lord."
Yeah, it was my intern. We've talked about it. Won't happen again. That'd be my move. But I don't think we see it often. And so I think it's just he's doing the transfer portal differently. He's active on social media. Like, he's quite literally more active on social media than most people around our age group from the 20 to 35 range. Like, he is very active. He understands things. He's hip. And so I think that's also another kind of big difference.
Well, and you know, the thing that I'll kind of end on is it has to be said, right? Like, nobody has ever tried to do this before. And one thing that I absolutely agree with that is kind of put out into the world and that Deion Sanders said is that, like, people are questioning us because they've never seen this before. And like, that is completely true. Like, that is why people are questioning it, because they've never seen it before. Now, you also talk to other coaches, and there are also some reasons why we've never seen some of this before, right? That we've never seen 70 players switch in an offseason and 60% of those players get run off the very next year. Like, there are reasons and there are costs potentially to doing it. Now, Deion Sanders is a singular personality in the history of football, much less in college football, and he is as poised and positioned to do it as anybody. I mean, again, they've got another top 3 to 5 transfer class coming in this year. They landed Jordan Seaton. They landed Draylon Miller from Silsbee Tech, another top 100 player, right? Like, they have done things that I think that people did not necessarily think that they can do. The question is, though, right? Like, conventional logic often exists for a reason. And so are you able to get completely outside of it and still maintain sort of the results that you expect from a college football program as well. So it's going to be a fascinating thing to watch. Again, like I view it more as like just a story about like, can this work? Is this something that's possible? Can you NFLize your program? Can you turn over a roster and everybody fall into line and learn how to do things together? If anybody can do it, it's Deion Sanders. My question is more, can anyone do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're going to learn every single step of the way in the 2024 season. Shehan, I appreciate you for joining us. Tell the people what you're working on. Shehan is always crafting up some amazing analysis of whether it's a conference or individual story. So tell us what you're working on before we go.
Yeah, this week is a big week for us at CBS. We drop our annual coaches rankings, so we'll get to rank every single. Actually, this year we changed it up. So in the past, we've done sort of conference by conference, and then the Power Five coaches. We actually have an entire Power Five coaches rankings and an entire Group of Five coaches rankings as well. So that was, I'll tell you what, that was a lot of work that goes into that to put that all together. So listen, I'll tell you right now, I think that people are going to have some thoughts about where Coach Prime lands. And so, yeah, that'll be coming out later this week.
Yeah, I can't wait to see where he lands. If I had to guess, and you don't have to confirm or deny, I would say he'd probably be, Power 5 wise, I'd probably say he'd be in the 50s to 60 range, or Power 4 range, excuse me. And nationally, oh gosh, I would say he'd probably drop, obviously, because there's a lot of Group of Five coaches on the rise. So it'll be real interesting to see where he ends up. Shehan, thank you for joining us. Everyone else, thank you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So you guys have a great start to your week.